What can a fighter pilot teach you about effective culture and managing under pressure?
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Well, please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Waldo Waldman. I'm going to be calling him Waldo. So if you're watching this live, we are live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. And Waldo is known as an expert in leadership, but much more than that. We're going to talk about that today. And for those of you watching this is live. He doesn't have a series of pre-proposed questions and answers. So this is our discussion on what can a fighter pilot teach us about effective cultures and leading people, especially people leading under pressure. But if you're listening to this on the podcast and you're not watching this, you can find Waldo at yourwingman.com. And then behind me, I have I've worked with Waldo and he was kind enough to share and say, Ford, you're a wingman. And so this sits on my shelf, reminds me that I've got a wingman. So we'll talk more about what a wingman is and all that. But Waldo, welcome to the show today.
Great to see you, Ford. Proud to be your wingman.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, you're an icon in this industry. We're both in the Hall of Fame and keynote speakers, and we speak on different topics, but we've been in the business for years. So I want you to share, in your experience, how did you go from a fighter pilot to an expert in leadership? Now, obviously, you have to be able to lead to be a fighter pilot, but where did that gap, what got you into this?
I like challenge. I think anybody listening to this podcast in business, in particular in the entrepreneurial and sales space, loves challenge, right? We love to be pushed to our limits, and I like living on the edge. It kind of makes me feel alive, and I like coming through for people as well. I like to be depended on, and that's really what a wingman is, a trusted and reliable partner. And one thing that I loved about not just flying jets, because it's exciting. You got this F-16 right over here, right?
Yep.
It's a beautiful jet, Mach 2, et cetera. It's really the culture. When I go back to a fighter base, I don't look at the jets as much as I go back to the squadrons. I want to see the photos of the people I used to fly with. Maybe the crusty commander who's there now, the 1-star or 2-star general, old fart like me, who we could share stories and reminisce on being deployed in a 12-person tent in Iraq or dodging missiles over Serbia. That culture, that embodiment of trust and mutual support and excellence is what I loved. And that's why I wanted to go into the fighter pilot world and why I eventually wanted to get into sales and entrepreneurship, because a lot of my buddies fly for the airlines. It's nothing wrong with that, but I call it dozing for dollars. It's kind of boring, right? If a jet doesn't have a gun or a radar, it's boring for me. And so I really wanted to get into sales and eventually wean myself into public speaking and coaching, which is a lot of pressure, as you well know. Like when we're out there, speaking and teaching and competing, and we're friendly competitors as well. It's like, you've got to be on your game. You got to build trust. You got to be an expert at your craft. So that's kind of a 30,000 foot view of why I'm here and why I love flying jets and coaching and speaking.
So what do you see in the organizations that you're working with today as it relates to the challenges that they're facing? Now, I'll just open it up by saying, and I've said this on other podcasts too, other episodes, the biggest challenge when I sit down and when you sit down and we ask our clients that are interested in bringing us in for an opening keynote for a big conference, whether it's 1,000 people or 10,000 people, I always ask them, what are the top challenges you're facing? And they always come down the same thing, right? They say it's retaining and finding good people and making them accountable and engaging them. It's increasing our sales, or maybe it's marketing. But in the space I'm in now, with you, I know it's leadership, but we know that leadership is culture, leadership, management, team building, change, communication. There's all these different factors, and they show up in all these different ways. And when I think about you, everybody, so I look at everything through the lens of a marketer, right? And you do too, as because you may be positioned as a leadership speaker, but you're one of the savviest sales and marketing people that I've had the pleasure over years to get to know, and your insights and how we mastermind together, which is why I wanted to have you on the episode to share it with these business owners. So business owners today are faced with all these challenges, and they don't always know where to start, and they don't even know where the problem is. There's always one person or one organization, one group at the scene of the crime. So leaders will say, we need our culture fixed. And they think it's something that somebody else has to do. With anything I've talked about so far, what do you see as the problem? And what do you see as a couple steps on helping solve that problem?
So Colin Powell, the late great Colin Powell, said leadership is about solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day they've either lost confidence that you can help or concluded that you don't care. So problem solving, how do you create environments where people can come to you for help? When you call out Mayday, Mayday, is somebody there at your left and right? Are they prepared? Do they have the integrity, the values, the work ethic, the discipline, the commitments necessary to solve those problems? And so when you look at the ecosystem of your small business, I don't care if you're a financial advisor or, doing home services or a sales manager for a software company, you've got to say, is that environment built to solve problems? And are you the type of person that others can come to for help? And so it's always about what I call that inner wingman. You got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you emulating the characteristics that make a good leader? Are you preparing? Are you empathetic to some of the needs and of your team? Are you asking the questions? Are you defensive when other people give you feedback? Are you hitting the gym? Are you hitting the gym and working on your health and fitness? Doing all the things necessary to extract peak performance out of that Top Gun wingman or wingman that you're working with. So a lot of that never fly solo concept is about building strong teams, but it always starts with the individual. Always, always, always. And so we have to look at ourselves as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as general managers, franchise owners, and saying, what are you doing to do that? And so if you start there and are very pensive about it and really, really intuitive about it and think deeply about what drives you, then now you're on the road of saying, okay, now what can I do to help drive others? Because I think the problems that we solve, like if we're really honest with ourselves, it's the same challenges that we're going through is what our team's going through,
So the concept of never flying solo and starting with yourself, makes sense. I mean, I always think, I heard years ago, clean up your own backyard before you worry about the neighborhood, right? And so as a leader of organizations myself and having 17 different companies, I had to learn that I had to learn what leadership was because I saw everything through three different lenses, right? People in business are good at one of three things. They're either good at delivering the product or service, they're good at leading and managing, or they're good at marketing and sales. But they're never good at all three of those modalities. They're usually good at two. They're usually good at delivering whatever the product or service is, and then they either fall on the operations side or the marketing and sales side, right? There's one of those two sides. And as a business owner, I had to hire my weakness, and I had to also start with me first and improve my leadership skills through books that you've written and the sessions that I've attended where I've had the opportunity of sharing the stage and then seeing you speak before me. And I'm taking more notes than the people in the room because I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go back and talk to my team about that. So when you have people that leadership isn't their normal way of thinking, or they have people on their team that are codependent, or they're waiting to be told what to do as opposed to taking initiative, what does an organization do to help solve that problem?
First, they make sure there's no retribution when you ask for help or admit a mistake or call somebody out for that matter who's maybe breaching the values and standards of that organization. What I loved about Flying Fighters is that, hey, it didn't matter how experienced you were, if you were a male, female, gay, straight, if you showed up, kicked some butt, made things happen, man, you were going to get promoted. You were going to be put in positions. And if you were the flight lead, the leader leading that 4-ship formation on a training mission, and you forgot to call your gear down and locked or a call to kill of a bandit at left-hand turn, 22,000 defending east, and your pipper wasn't on, and we're looking at the tapes, you better have an answer for that. And you better be open and receptive to the feedback because that young wingman, the 24-year-old right out of training, may have waxed your tail, and there's something that he or she did that may be able to teach you. Now, hopefully, when you're an instructor pilot or a flight lead, you've earned the wings, you've earned your right to be in that position because you're good. But there's going to be somebody who's going to teach you a lesson or two. So being receptive to that is key. And so it's two-way. Once again, you being receptive to the feedback and also creating cultures of courage where young guns or maybe seasoned veterans can call out the threat, give the feedback, make folks perhaps feel uncomfortable because they're not risking retribution or getting fired. You've got to be able to say, Ford, break right, missiles coming at you. And I don't want you to say, you sure didn't mean break left? Or, dude, I've been speaking 10 years longer than you, or let's have a conference call and discuss this. So we have to be reactive and responsive. So that culture is key. And that's what I love, once again, about the guys and gals I flew with. Nobody had the egos. Only after the tapes were reviewed and the mission was done said, Ford, you kicked my ass today. Well done. I'm buying you a beer. It's a beautiful thing. So performance before relationships. Key. Relationships are not everything.
Yep. I
Yeah,
think that's so true.
relationships are everything. The relationships are not really. I'd rather fly with a butthead who I didn't really like that much, but who was in position, taking out the target, who I trusted in the air when our lives were on the line, rather than somebody who I liked to play poker with or hang out with on the weekends. No. Now it's great when you have both. But
Right.
if you're putting relationships before performance, then guess what? I really like Ford. I like Joanne. I don't want to give her that feedback because she's my buddy. That's not how it works. And if you use tact, which is another segment of being a good wingman and how to be a good communicator, you can give that feedback, but performance and mission objectives before relationships.
I think that's so true. I know with me, and I've got my team who monitor this. Alex, my producer, and my team, watches our Fordify lives that we Wednesdays 11 a.m. Central across the board. But I know that handling people with tact and skill has always been a challenge because I'm a direct person and I communicate. And because I like feedback, I made the assumption that everybody liked feedback, right? And then I had to learn that you can give feedback to someone who doesn't want the feedback, and then you've stepped in it. And then of course I have choice words, so I'll say something like, "That is all messed up." And then they'll say, "Well, was it all messed up?" And what I really meant was, "Hey, there's a few things we could do to improve it," right? So I've got this translator box I have to work from. But I think the real key is what you're saying here, and I hope people are taking notes, is you need to be the type of leader you want to work with. You need to be open to communication. You need to be willing to create a culture where people are comfortable communicating and sharing. My team has two mental things that I give them. They have the red flag and the flare gun. And so if they see something that's wrong, they all have permission to come in and wave the red flag. If something's wrong, don't sit on it. Don't hide it. Don't put it under a drawer. Don't file it away in the email. Wave the red flag. And if the red flag doesn't get attention, then shoot the flare gun off, right? I mean, let me know, okay, because a lot of times I'm doing 17 different things and they're like, you didn't listen. And so I have to stop and listen. So I use a mental flag and flare gun. What do you do with organizations to help give them some tools so that they do have open communication? Because I think the real challenge, and I'm just going to go back and open it up for you, is organizations, they're all about, they have sometimes they get conditioned to just setting up relationships and no one wants to really talk about the problems or fix them.
Right. Yeah, I empathize with you, and your comments, it kind of underscores why we're such good friends, because we're culturally aligned, and that's important because there are certain cultures in an organization, maybe that may be detrimental to that open, honest, transparent, sometimes curt communication, right? And everybody's different. And this goes back to situational leadership. You got to really assess the person, what works for them, right? I mean, in a squadron, in fighter squadron, we have something called First Friday. We get together, we break bread, we have a beer or two, we bring our families in, we get to know each other as people before pilots. The best commanders are the ones who connected with me as Waldo Waldman, the guy from New York, not the fighter pilot who's been there for 4 years, right?
Right.
And so make sure that you're getting your team together to understand that new hire who only works 8 hours and will never work on a weekend may have other commitments because he or she may be a single parent.
Right.
Maybe you can't talk intensely or use foul language for that matter, where I don't really care, but maybe you got to understand their background, who they are, what drives them. So I always say, value the values of your teammates. Get to know them, their families, their issues, their challenges, their dreams. Then they'll respect you because you're getting to know them and you're helping them along the way. So once again, first Friday, breaking bread, realizing that this crusty old colonel who's getting ready to retire, who can't stay in position, right? Because he's kind of losing the edge. Well, I didn't know he was in Vietnam before. This guy's a freaking silver star. Whoa.
Right.
And maybe he's not that great in the air, but he really understands tactics and tools. So everybody has their strengths and weakness in any squadron of peak performers. So that's just a thing to do. Make sure you're taking your folks out to dinner or going bowling or bringing them to a house. Have a book club. Marinate the steak of that relationship, I like to say. And then when you have to give them that mission critical feedback, maybe because you don't have the time to massage the feedback cake, right? Because you got to be like, boom. And they say, hey, Waldo was pretty curt. I get it. But we built a relationship and that seed of trust was planted, even though maybe a little bit of fire was brought to the table. And that's important, especially for type A peak performers who are dodging missiles and have a lot of things to take care of. And I'll share something else with you here in a moment, but I know you have some comments.
No, you're good. I want you to continue. I just agree so much because, you know, I would, so we look at happy client, happy bank account, happy team. So if we did a pie, you know, we want to make sure that the client is having a great experience. We want to make sure that we're doing it in a profitable way, but I also want to make sure the team is happy in doing what they're doing, because pay is a temporary motivator. You can pay them more, but that's a blip. But if they enjoy who they're working with, enjoy being able to learn, the challenge what I have learned that I've had to do is attract people that are open-minded, that are growth-minded, that want to contribute, that want to practice and learn. If they're a clock watcher, I don't want to use this word snowflake, but this is my show. I can use that term. So my definition of that is just someone who's weak. So if don't trash us for this comment, but it's somebody who just isn't really strong enough to live in the real world. Maybe they haven't had any real world experience. So whatever the other definition is, I'm not using that. But, you know, I've had to only quality people. I think I learned that years ago from Les Brown or something. You know, OQP is, you know, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. And so how do I either want to try, I want to understand the standard. I want to have a minimum target and optimal performance. I want to train them to standard, hold them accountability, but have them take personal accountability for their own performance. If they're just a clock watcher waiting to be told what to do, they can't work in my think tank or my creative agency or with my business, because I need problem solvers, right? And so I need problem solvers, and then also people that can execute. But with all that, toss the mic back to you. How would you unpack that, or what would you share?
Yeah, well, you always bring up great points whenever we have a discussion, but those standards in my keynotes, one segment is on those standards, you know, emulating excellence, the standards, fighter squadron, how you show up, when you show up, how long the briefing is. When we do a radar assisted trail departure at night, we have 10 seconds of separation before takeoff, not 9.5, not 10.5. It's 10 freaking seconds. You follow the standard, and the standard is the min. And if you can't accommodate those standards, once again, love you, Ford, love you, Joe, love you, Kelly. We got to put you on probation, and the wings have Velcro on them, because you just never know if they're going to be taken away. So that sense of performance creates some anxiety, but it forces high standards. It forces hard work, training. You don't want to be walking into a squadron, falling asleep, and the guy or gal that's not mission ready, because the expectations are high. That's, once again, why I like hanging out with wingman trusted partners, not just buddies.
Right.
My friends, I have a saying, make your friends your mentors and your mentors your friends. A guy like you, Ford, I can have a beer with and talk about life. But if I see you acting with disrespect or lacking integrity and you're full of doo-doo.
You could say it. My beeper button wasn't working. I think my sound effect isn't working, but no problem.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So my dad always said, be careful who you spend time with on the weekends. That culture happens outside the cockpit. So if I'm coaching a leader, a manager, a general manager, a sales rep, I say, hey, who are you hanging out with on the weekends? Who's emulating excellence? Who's pushing you to be better? Who's emulating things to you? Are they calling you out? Are they making the hair stand up on the back of your neck if they don't see you delivering your value and really honing up to the standards of excellence that you live? So that's very, very important. Once again, like, and this is even in our association of speakers and people that we hang out with. Don't call me a wingman if I see you thinking about if cheating on your spouse or acting like a buffoon and disrespecting the Starbucks barista. That's not somebody. I want transparency and honesty, and I think that's important. Once again, goes back to core values. Yes. Goes back to standards as well. And so one thing that I want to share, and this is tactical. If you look on my screen,
go ahead.
It says the check 6. Can you see what?
I have it zoomed out, but I will. I'm gonna move the slide. But you just keep talking. I'll fix it for a second. Keep going.
You got it. Yeah. So we're showing a slide here that says check 6, and he's looking over his shoulder at 6 o'clock. And now, have you ever heard that expression before?
Yeah. Check your 6. Absolutely.
So what does it mean to you as a non-fighter pilot, right?
As a non-fighter pilot, I would mean watch my back or have someone watching my back.
You got it. Now, you just said one thing that's important because we're always watching our back. But guess what? When you're strapped into a jet, barely able to move, you can't see your most vulnerable position behind you. You got a blind spot. You can't see if you're leaking fuel or on fire. However, somebody's at your right or left, they look over their shoulder, then they can call out the threat to you. Say, hey, Ford, you're on fire. Oh, thank God, I didn't know. You're leaking fuel, or bail out, or brake right. And so now I'm giving you the feedback because you may not see the picture. And you want your teammate, your wingman or wingman, to see what you can't see and then have the courage to tell you what you need to hear. This is so important, especially small business owners, any sales team, any executive who has to be myopic. I got to take out the target today. I need to take out this bridge. I need to make this call. I got to do this proposal, run this meeting, train my team. Guess what? There's going to be some missiles and threats coming that you may not see. So your team, and I know you're getting this, Ford.
No, I am. I'm with you.
You can't see, right? And so now I want them to say, look, Waldo, I know I'm new here. And I'm 24 years old. I'm a millennial, whatever. Like, who cares? Tell me what I need to hear. And guys like us need to hear that feedback. We savor it because it leads to growth. Growth-minded people are the people we want to hang out with. So when you're assessing your squad, you got to say, all right, who is looking at what I can see? Am I hiring folks to look at that radar sweep? Am I open to that feedback? And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Maybe there are things that we are missing. This is why consultants or guys like me and you are important, because they may not say, oh, I had no clue that there was this blind spot here. I need to outsource it, leverage somebody to do social media or do sales calls, or maybe lead the team so I could be the strategic guy or gal in my squad, right? Some people are just not great communicators or leaders. Doesn't mean they're not smart or business savvy. Maybe I need a new wingman to deal with that. So this is how you really build cultures of courage, accountability, and growth. And this is how you innovate and adapt.
Yeah, I would say I crave the feedback. In fact, I require it. When I hire somebody, I tell them I need someone who's thick-skinned, who's willing to speak up if they think something. Now, obviously, we want to do it with respect, and we want it to be relevant to the situation and not a personal attack. But I want them to be able to tell me what they think. And if they mess up, I just want them to take accountability and say, you know what, I missed it. Okay, fine. Then what are we going to do to create processes and systems and accountability so that doesn't happen? Because you need people to be able to do the feedback. What would you say to an organization that either has someone who's grown, they've stayed longer than they should have at a company? So maybe everybody comes into our life for a season and a reason, and maybe they've outstayed their usefulness, whether it's a family member or leader in a company. And again, this is for educational and informational purposes only. We're not telling you to get divorced, and do not blame us if anybody says anything. Okay, so we got the disclaimer out of the way, but what do you do? What do you tell a leader who says, hey, my salesperson's been here, or this leader's been here for years, and I'm not willing to replace them? What would you tell somebody if they know there's a problem, it's cancerous in their organization? What would you as a leader tell that other leader or C-level executive?
Yeah, that's hard. A lot of folks have that challenge because there's a little bit maybe nepotism, or there's relationships built. You don't want to fire somebody who's been with you for a while. But if you're waiting for the last minute to have this conversation and not maybe cross-training them into an area where they can be useful, or perhaps opening the door to them to find a new job, or potentially put the aircraft in the hangar, close it up and call it a season, right? Call it a career.
I'm going to start using that one if you don't mind. I'm your wingman, so this plane needs to land. You need to put it in the hangar.
Yeah, because sometimes, we got to refuel or retool, right?
Yeah.
We've got to be able to park the jet and say, you know what? You can't change the engine while you're flying. And sometimes we need to tighten down the rivets and maybe upgrade the weapon system. This jet is an F-16. It was built in the 70s. It's still relevant today. But what makes it relevant is not necessarily the airframe. It's always got to be the pilot and the weapon systems, the things that you can strap on and off here. An outdated weapon system, or you're outdated, you're in trouble. And this is why many times fighter pilots in the U.S. Air Force are the best, because we have the tactical know-how and skill. The Chinese may have better tactics, but they don't think tactically like we do. They can't manage the stress and strain of going to battle. Or maybe we are outgunned. The Koreans have a lot more fighter pilots than we do, the North Koreans, but we have the tools and technologies, right? So we got to put this jet in a hangar, get a little uncomfortable, invest, put some new weapon systems on, maybe a new CRM, maybe a new hire, maybe leveraging artificial intelligence, whatever it is. So now that our business is operating, and this goes back to more on business processes, which I love talking about as well. I know you do. It's all about relevance, right? That aircraft is so great and is such a global monster because we're always upgrading the systems. Look at what Israel's done with the F-16s. Amazing. So start packing on that weapon systems being relevant, and knowing that sometimes a technology or a tool, as opposed to a human being, may be the key. You look at a lot of franchises. I had a small business owner come by. I want to get my deck done. Texting me, letting me know he was there, automated scheduling, right? All that stuff. I just moved into a house. I had another a security company come by doing their testing. I love the back end, the texting, the email, all those things to manage the pressure and responsibilities of the team, outsourcing it to that technology just to free up some time. And then training your team to use it. If they're still using Excel spreadsheets and paper notes instead of some technologies and tools, that's also important. So it goes back to being mission ready, right? One of the things about culture is like, we need to get in the books. We need to have high standards of training. We need to rehearse in front of each other. We need to embarrass each other in front of each other, call each other out, push each other to get better in a 1G environment, sipping a beer or a cup of coffee, rather than being at 9Gs over Iraq or Afghanistan getting our butt shot at. So if we were in a squadron together, me and you were going to chair fly. We're going to rehearse, maybe in front of a crowd of 20 people, your peers, pressure, ego, all those things. It's a beautiful thing. You suck. Guess what? You're going to pay. You're going to buy beers. You're going to suffer. You're going to get in the book, because we want you to suffer on the ground in front of us. Right. Because we're going to battle in 6 months, man. Get your ass in gear. Let's get going. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So don't get so, passive perhaps as a leader of your squadron where you're not enforcing those standards, and make sure that you're the guy or gal who's in the cockpit, leveraging that CRM, going through that painful process, right? And they see you doing it, they'll do it as well. And that's hard. It's very, very hard to get in the books and learn all the detailed myopics. Look at what we did through COVID. Yeah. These camera systems, using our stream decks and our eCams and the cameras, right? We pivoted and adjusted, suffered. Well, we did. A lot of people didn't do it. They didn't do picture in picture and switchers and do all the stuff that you and I have done because we needed to be able to do it because, they invest. And for those of you listening, you can Google both of our speaking fees. We're not cheap, but they're not paying us for the 45 minutes or the 60 or the 90 minutes. They're paying us for those years of expertise and service on, changing and moving the needles for them. Right. And so they should elevate it. So that's a good takeaway for anybody who's watching or listening on the podcast on the Business Growth Show is maybe they need to mystery shop and take a good look at their brand from the outside in. And as you and I have done with other experts and speakers, because
they may be good online or on the platform, but their online presence doesn't match their offline presence because they don't have the systems in place to be able to do that. I love, doing this. So for example, we're live right now, but we're not doing this on Zoom. We're live through a video studio, so we can do picture in picture and change it up and change the graphics and use slides and backgrounds and things like that. And so I think it's always, it's looking at the standards is something that you're well known for, is pushing the limits, right? I mean, your whole brand is Never Fly Solo. Your website, of course, for those of you watching or listening, is yourwingman.com. And one of the things I've always known about you, and we've been in the National Speakers Association for decades together and in groups and masterminds and things, is you're all about relationships. But I love your no bullshit. Whoops, didn't hit my button. I love the no bullshit approach. I mean, you're straightforward, and I crave that. What do you say to an organization that when you try to raise the bar, they want to stay stuck, and they're using excuses instead of taking a hard look at what they need to change? As we get ready to wrap up the episode, what do you tell an organization that's stuck and maybe they're not willing to take that hard look and make those hard decisions?
Well, I guess it always goes down to the context of why they're in business. What's their metric? What are they measuring? And if it's performance, if it's sales, if it's customer service, the margins, yada, yada, ask them, what are the variables that impacted? Are you building a club that happens to sell a product or a service? Or are you a profit generating, business growth focused, kick-ass organization? This goes back to the culture, because some cultures are okay with being mediocre,
Unfortunately, that's just a shame, but yes.
Yes. And maybe like guys like us, especially entrepreneurs, there's no ceiling on our success and our profits, et cetera. We're driven by that. It's a metric. The margins, the revenue is a metric. And it's a metric of relationships, of your quality, your referrals, all the things that go into the pie. But it goes back to what you were saying before about your fees. I always say you have to command your fee. You don't demand your fee.
Right.
You command respect. You don't demand respect. You're a commander, not a demander. Right. You command people's respect. And so when you say take the hill, which is a command, not necessarily demand, we call them wing commanders, flight commanders, squadron commanders. So I know I'm throwing a lot here, but you have to ask what is potentially suffering because of your inability to tell it like it is. Are you promoting mediocrity? And how is that ultimately impacting your customer? Because if you really want them to be the best and deliver the best, sometimes you got to lose a battle to win the war. Meaning, hey, we sucked today. We were late. We weren't on time. We didn't deliver the value. We're cutting our fee by 20%, or this one is on us.
Yep.
And I think when you mess up, even in a relationship, an interpersonal relationship at work, possibly, or even with your spouse, when you mess up, that's an opportunity for you to really reinforce your trust and brand. People smell inauthenticity and BS more than ever. The world is plastic more than ever. That's why I tell folks I'm coaching, get out there, have communication, share a wart, cut a vein, let them know you're human, admit your mistakes, right?
Yep.
Get to work. Don't be a wimp about it, but everybody should be used to saying, I'm sorry and I need help or I messed up. And now that's an opportunity for you to clean it up. And this is so great in restaurants, in franchise businesses. Right. I don't care if you're cleaning carpet. We messed up today. This one's on me. We're going to make it right. And you know what? Sometimes it's like, thank you for just not making an excuse and delivering what you could. Yep. I'll give you another shot. I
just want people to take responsibility. I mean, I don't mind if they mess up. I just want them to take responsibility. So I have one last question for you. And if I think of discipline, you're a disciplined guy. Like everything you do is discipline. Now, I'm sure that's not only an instinct part, but it's also ingrained in you. How can organizations and individuals, individuals is what I'm really meaning. How can an individual improve their discipline where they know what they need to do? And for those of you listening, I'm asking for myself. I'm not asking because I want the whole readership and viewers to know, but selfishly, how can you help someone improve their discipline to do the things they know they need to do? Because like, as we've always said, the true character of a person is not what they say, it's what they do when nobody's looking. And I'm talking more about weight loss or making those sales calls. You know, they need to do it. They have approach avoidance. They're procrastinating. They're cleaning their desk instead of making the call. They're avoiding something. What would you say to those people? Because I know there's people on this viewing this, because I've seen the list of the people that are here today. What would you say to them for somebody who needs to improve their discipline? Because if they improve their discipline, their performance increases and their results increase, and it's a positive cycle.
We could talk probably for an hour just on this. It's a fantastic question. It's very difficult to answer because there's many variables. Number one, I like to have a plan before I go to bed at night for the day coming up. Like I know exactly what I'm going to do when I wake up, the calls I'm going to make, the checklist. Sometimes I put it on a piece of paper. I use my iPhone notes. So I have a plan. The discipline is my calendar. It's feeding it to me. And if you enforce that calendar and those action items, you'll accomplish them. So leverage technologies and tools to make things easier for yourself. Also, when you're not accomplishing your goals and fulfilling your commitments, there's a negative payoff. It deflates your passion, your drive, your self-respect. Like if I hit the gym today and I hit it hard, and I know when I don't hit the gym when I should, it eats away at me. It erodes my passion and drive, and I kind of beat myself up. Why? Because I'm growth focused, and I'm right. and I want to be great. Yep. And so there's the negative payoff is that self-loathing. It may be a little bit. It's like when you eat the cookie or have the cake and it tastes so good, and then you're like, I shouldn't have done that. So this mental game that we play with ourselves causes us to suffer.
Yep.
I did a video today, and it's going to go up on Instagram or LinkedIn, and it said something like, "Hey, I just finished a great workout today, and before I hit the gym, my son said, 'Have a great workout, Dad,' or 'Enjoy your workout, Dad.'" And I'm like, I'm not going to enjoy this workout, and I normally don't enjoy any workout. Because I'm going to suffer through this. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to go through some pain and discomfort. However, I am going to enjoy how I feel when it's done.
Yep.
The endorphins, the passion, knowing that I fulfilled my responsibilities, that I honored my commitments, that fills you with this sense of confidence. That's the key here, folks. Confidence. And you can't take that away from somebody. You see somebody that's confident, they did something that they honored their commitments and they made it true. It may have been saying no to the donut, or hitting the green smoothie, or getting up out of bed, or honoring their spouse in some way, or shutting their mouth when they shouldn't have said something, right, or whatever. All those things, like, man. And so that's where I have maybe the sense of confidence. And maybe people may call you cocky or ambitious, whatever, but just know that. That's why I always ask people I'm coaching, tell me about your schedule for the day. What books are you reading? Who are you hanging out with? What did you do today? What 100%. Did you eat? Show me, and then I'll tell you probably how you feel. One of my workers, long story short, she was kind of depressed. She was such a wonderful, wonderful person, but she was overweight and smoking pot and drinking a lot. And she was down on herself. So I'm like, well, what came first? The pot smoking and the drinking, or the weight and the depression?
Right.
Look at your actions. And if you're a peak performer, if you're a growth-oriented, growth-fixed mindset person, suffer a little bit and then get the joy at the end. I have a saying, pain leads to peace, baby. Go through the pain, and peace comes with great revenue, great relationships, a lot of fun time, maybe some vacations and great conversations.
Well, fantastic. So we go live, everybody, Fordify Live Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and a few other platforms. Well, this has been Lieutenant Colonel Waldo Waldman at yourwingman.com. Waldo, again, pleasure. Thanks for taking the time away from your busy schedule. And I hope to have you on the show again soon. Thanks so much.
By the way, real quick, I'm going to give everybody that QR code. You can pop it in there. Everybody who's listened to this podcast, go to yourwingman.com/NFS or use that QR code. That's a download to my New York Times bestselling audiobook, Never Fly Solo. That'll connect you into LinkedIn, Instagram, yada, yada, yada. But that's a gift to your people.
Here, but if you're listening on the podcast, it's yourwingman.com/NFS. So Nancy Frang. All right, what would be the typical?
Never Fly Solo.
Yeah, Never Fly Solo. Yeah, no kidding. I can't believe I didn't use that as the main thing.
And you'll get,
Silly.
and they'll get a 5-video resilience challenge series. They'll get into my ecosystems and all that good stuff. So,
well, thanks again. This has been amazing. I know. Again, for those of you listening, we didn't prepare a bunch of questions. I mean, I like to have guests on that are sharp and take the conversation where it goes. I hope to have you on again soon, and I really appreciate you joining us today.
Same here, Ford. God